So good evening, everybody. I'm Stesha Brandon. I'm the Literature and Humanities Program Manager here at the Seattle Public Library. And as we begin tonight, I wanted to acknowledge that we are on Indigenous land. Here in Seattle, we are on the territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Duwamish people. We honor their elders, past and present, and thank them for their stewardship of this land. Welcome to tonight's program with Poot Rang and Susan Liu, which is presented in partnership with Elliott Bay Book Company, Hedgebrook, and the Wing Luke Museum. We're grateful to our author series sponsor, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, and the Seattle Times for their generous support of library programs. Thank you as well to the Seattle Public Library Foundation. Private gifts to the foundation from thousands of donors help the library provide free programs and services that touch the lives of everyone in our community. I want to give a big hello and welcome to all of our attendees here at Central Library and also watching the live stream. And if folks in the live stream want to chime in on the chat about where you're watching from, we were going to try and figure out how many countries we've got represented tonight. We have a few other events coming up that might be of interest. Tomorrow night, our friend Angela Garbus will be here to talk about her new book, Essential Labor, Mothering as Social Change. And on Thursday, May 19th, the wonderful Claudia Castro Luna will be here to celebrate the release of her newest poetry collection. And I know that our friends over at Elliott Bay have more information about the events in their newsletter as well at their table. Elliott Bay Books also have a copy of Put's book. And if you're here with us in person tonight, they have copies on the table to your right. And if you're watching online, you can find her book at their website, elliottbaybook.com. Put is happy to sign your books after the event. We are requesting that people be masked to stand in the personalization line for everybody's safety. And for folks here in person, if you need to exit the auditorium during the event, there is a door to your right. I know it's a little confusing because the door became a wall, but if you need to exit at some point, there's a door right there that will take you out of the auditorium. And at the end of the program, we'll ask that folks exit through the 4th Avenue entrance or exit, which is right behind me in front of you. After tonight's conversation, there will be time for questions from the audience. Folks here in person can write your questions on the cards that we gave you as you came in, and staff will collect them at the end of the program. And if you're watching online, you can ask your question at any time by writing it in the Q&A box that's at the bottom of your screen. And finally, we're interested in hearing from you. Toward the close of the event, we'll be posting a link to a survey in the chat and collecting paper surveys as folks leave. We'd appreciate it if you took a minute to fill out the survey after the program. Now, I am delighted to welcome Rick Simonson, who is going to introduce our speakers tonight. Hi, Rick.
Thank you, Stesha. Thank you, everyone who's here and there in the other world. But as actually Stesha did mention, all over the world. And I think tonight, actually tonight is before the book Ma and Me, Put's book, is officially in the world. We got a little dispensation to cheat by a day. But we also can claim that it is Tuesday, May 17th in Phnom Penh and in the rest of Cambodia. So those of you who are with us from there, we know some are or will. We say special thanks and welcome to you too. The book, well, many of you know why you're here tonight. I say you do. We've had the response over there. When Put came out, that was a whoop and exultant cheer, such as one hasn't heard much for the last few years. And tonight you will hear her read from and talk about this book, Ma and Me. Many years in the works. Many of you here have been around and part of this book coming to be. I'm not going to say a whole lot about it because Put herself and Susan Liu, who you will also hear from, will be drawing that out. I will say something that probably can't get said as they go through all the things this book covers, and it covers a lot of ground: personal, historical, cultural, intense within family, but also place and the unique perspective of coming over here as a child, as a refugee from Cambodia, and then going back in different ways as daughter, as adult, and more. There's more things going on in this book. And along with the dynamic within the family, cultural, everything, where love is found, how it's found. and the lucky people that found it, Put and her significant love, who I assume is here tonight. But this all happens with beautifully written book. It's a journalist, and she's a journalist of note, widely published, New York Times, Guardian, Politico, Seattle Times, San Jose Mercury, elsewhere. Journalists don't always write, are always able to convert all that into a book, at least a book with the literary and narrative flow that this book has. It never flags as a book. It really keeps you going in so many directions and ways. And it's also a book about really hard work, physical labor of picking fruit, working the fields outside Eugene, done beautifully and tenderly, and yet with a kind of tenacity that obviously has been part of life along the way. So Put will be up here, and with her will be Susan Liu, who many of you also have known and seen. She's certainly been known and seen on stages and performances. Some of us just got to see her sort of read parts of Nguyen Phan Quay Mai's The Mountain Sings novel, but she was very much part of the library programs when Thi Bui was here with her graphic novel. But what Susan has done as a director, as a performer, as a producer, with these works is bring a lot of the Vietnamese American experience to the stage, to the fore. Her own one-woman show, 140 Pounds, How Beauty Killed My Mother, has been played all over and had great acclaim. There's also a sequel, Over 140 Pounds, that she's done. But the other part, for all the performance and stage craft that's involved, is that a year from now, more or less, she will be here as an author with a memoir coming out, which I believe is possibly tentatively titled something's daughter. The what? Manicurist's Daughter. I know there was something. The other thing I will say in this, and Susan's written and performed about her mother, Put has done so clearly with the title Ma and Me. We're at this interesting little moment here because these books are all started independent of each other, but we have had, just in this part of the country alone, 4 remarkable memoirs by women writing about their Korean mothers. Michelle Zauner's Crying in H Mart, Seattle poet E.H. Koh's, E.J. Koh, The Magical Language of Others, Sharon Su, who's in here tonight with us, Occupy This Body, and Grace Cho's Tastes Like War. All those books say strong, powerful things about their mothers, about everything else, and they do so in a way that's has a kind of a solidarity among them, but also unique qualities. And that also is very much true of what Put Rang has done in Ma and Me. And so with that, and Stesha having said the other good things about the book signing afterwards, we thank you for being here. We thank everyone who else is with us. And I ask you to please join in welcoming into the world a wonderful new author, Put Sadat Riang.
Put. This is like another, this is like your coming out party.
It's a different one. Surely it is.
Well, I mean, your book takes place in the Pacific Northwest. We've got the Oregon area, we've got Washington. So when I was reading it over the past month, I could see it. And I got to tell you all, I am reading the book and I just put exclamation points in the margins. I started just writing same in all caps. And then I started doing like big tears that just didn't really look like tears, but I kept drawing them, and then hearts. Like, so much of this book had so many parallels to what I've been experiencing as an artist. And I said, how could it be? You're Cambodian, I'm Vietnamese. But there was something about the refugee experience, being a boat person, but even more so, that is so universal, is about the most intimate relationship we have when we're born into this planet, the most sacred relationship. And that's between a child and their mother. And so when I was reading that, I was like, she's experiencing me and I am experiencing her. And I felt so intertwined in the work that you were writing. But like a good Khmer daughter, you don't start your memoir off by talking about yourself. You put your elders first. And you start talking about your mom, who's an amazing storyteller, who you followed in her footsteps also as an amazing storyteller, as a journalist. And even in your name, the origin of your name, put Sada, put you were born on a Wednesday, Sada, your mother's best friend who took her to the hospital when there was complications. Your name is a story, and you have created a story about her and you because they're intertwined. So why don't you start us off with the book, your first chapter, Crocodile and Tiger, where we get to learn about your mother.
Let's do this. Indeed, the elders do come first. There's a saying in Khmer, the language that left me in my youth, but links me to a land across seas because it plinks off my mother's tongue. Jotak kapo, lang lo kla. Go in the water, there's the crocodile. Come up on land, there's the tiger. Mat was 22 years old when she had to decide. The grandmothers in the village scolded her. You're too old. Your father is a drunk. No one will want to marry you. Being college educated and unmarried at age 22 made my mother an anomaly twice over in rural Cambodia. Her mother married at 15, her older sister at 18, matches made among elders. Her time was coming, she knew. But as she snuck past her teens and entered her 20s, she hoped to be forgotten. The boys started coming around before she finished college. A simple village girl whose feet clapped across her dusty town in a pair of plastic flip-flops. My mother was raised by a benevolent uncle who deemed her brain too valuable to waste in the rice paddies. He told her, when you get an education, you can do anything you want. And she believed him. These boys, the sons of professors and businessmen, followed her straight to her uncle's door, begging to marry her. She wanted none of them. She wanted instead the thing that Khmer girls are not born to have or raised to want, dreams. She dreamed of becoming a businesswoman and traveling the country, maybe even the world. She dreamed of living free. But soon after she finished college, a rumor reached her ear. Her father, who had been mostly absent from her life, had arranged her marriage. He came around now that there was a profit to be made, when the dowry for his daughter might sustain more months of gambling and drinking. Before the invitations were sent, she fled. She traveled east on a local bus that took her to Cambodia's capital, Phnom Penh, where she transferred to a regional taxi, the Bray Wang province on the eastern edge of Cambodia, mere miles from Vietnam. Her older brother lived there. He was sensible, he was kind. He would, she hoped, hide her. But it was 1967, and that strip of earth along the Cambodia-Vietnam border shook and broke open beneath her feet when bombs from American B-52s burst in the paddies. The night sky lit up with machine gun fire from the jungles, and she ran to the riverbed with her brother and his family, cupping her ears against the whistle of weapons, curling her body against the dirt, somersaulting all around her. A thought sprinted across her mind. I could die here. In the end, a part of her did, along with the 150,000 Cambodians, casualties of a Western war imported to Vietnam, then stretched into Cambodia. Collateral damage was what the Americans said. My mother realized she could stay with her brother and die trying to hide, or she could go back home and get married. What do you do when you cannot go into the water or come up on land?
Beautiful, just beautiful. And that crocodile and that tiger story is also a nod to your cover art as well, which I totally find
That's
fabulous.
right.
Show everybody. Ah, so cute. Okay, so I'm curious, when your dad had a heart complication and it was a heart attack.
Right.
And then they called you home, and that's when all this interviewing started.
That's right. I was a journalist living abroad when my father, he was having heart problems and ended up with quadruple bypass surgery. And I was in Phnom Penh at the time. In my mind, I thought I never was going to come back to America because I had found my place. I found my country, and it was a place that held me. And everything I knew who I was growing up, but you don't know until you're in the country of your birth. And so I had not intended to ever come back home to America again. But when she called, you can't resist your mother when she's crying on the phone. And when she called, she never even said what happened. All she said was, "Your pa." And I said, "Pa, what?" And she just started crying. And you know what you know. And so you buy the plane ticket, get on the plane, not knowing if he's going to be alive on the other end or what the situation is, but you just know you have to go.
Yeah. So I'm curious, before you started interviewing, like this book is 350, 60 pages. How many pages did you know already before the interviewing happened in terms of those stories?
A mere fraction.
Like
20,
1/3,
25,
like one
probably
1/8?
1/25, tiny amount.
So it's interesting how it's like for parents who have had so much trauma happen to them and us inheriting so much of that, experiencing so much of that, sometimes it takes this moment of where we don't know how much time we're going to have left. Like now it's time. But up until that point, did she ever really tell you that much?
She didn't, my mom, I think that they were too busy engaged in the enterprise of trying to survive. And so it wasn't really part of her culture or our culture in a way to go backwards. And also in the Buddhist tradition, you don't go backwards, you just keep going forward. And so for my mom, her attitude when I would ask her question is, why do you want to know these things? They already happened, it doesn't serve you. And much similar to your family story as well. And so, and Susan, you and I talked about this, which I find so beautiful in both of our respective stories. To me, there's always that one person in the family who we can't go forward until we go backwards first.
It's unfortunate.
It is.
It's
you're
terrible.
really damned when that happens,
Yeah,
because
you're
then
like,
you end up punked and have to do a fucking,
yeah, you're like,
you have to write a memoir.
like, when are you done? Oh, I have to write it. Yep. Got it. So much.
My students, some of my students are here, and I told them, I said, you guys have to stop swearing. I'm about to go on book tour.
Yeah, do you have UW memoir writing class in the house?
I know, they must be online, yeah.
All right, so much of your book is about debt and duty to our parents, to our cultural expectations. Like it's literally being stuffed down our throats with food and with how we should behave, right? The norms. And the most interesting thing I find about being a good daughter, the fulfilling filial piety, is that even when they're not around, it governs your life.
Mm-hmm.
In your relationships, in how you do the dishes, in how you buy groceries. It's part of your veins. It's in your blood. And so I really resonated with that because I also feel that sense of obligation. And what has become lore in your family is how your mother had saved your life when the captain said, throw that baby overboard. And she has told that the almost dead baby overboard. And she has told that story of saving your life over and over and over again. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows in your family. Everyone knows in your community. And it's what hangs over your head the entire book. So can you take us there in the chapter, Failure to Thrive?
So this is a chapter, just to give you guys a sense of where we go before we get here. Is my family has left Cambodia on a ship escaping on April 17th, 1975, and we spend 23 days at sea, not knowing where the ship is going to end up. And eventually it ends up at the American Naval Base in the Philippines, Subic Bay. And so this chapter picks up there, and it's one of the shorter chapters of the book, but I think it really gets to the heart of one of the central insights I have in this book. Failure to thrive. In my mind, it is always just the two of us, my mother and I, even when we are what is missing. In the single photograph taken of my family at Subic Bay Naval Base, where we stayed for 1 month while being processed to go to America, the image is incomplete. My father, skinny in a butterfly collar shirt and bell bottoms, holds Chun, all cherubic and short-haired. Soap stands on a picnic bench, a little boy squinting into the glare of tropical island light. In front of Soap, Sin stands, hands to her sides, obedient and oldest. We are 6 as a family unit, but in this photo, there are only the 4 of them against a backdrop of the Grande Island Beach Shack, where in other times, US military personnel and their families stationed at Subic Bay would come to picnic, to laugh and swim and play volleyball on the shore, a place for recreation, and for my family and thousands of Vietnamese and Cambodian refugees, a place for recreating, for fresh starts and new dreams. The photo of my father and siblings capture the first point of transfer from one world into the next. How come there's no me and there's no you? I asked Matt. It is spring 2013, and this will be among the last interviews I will have with her before packing my house in Portland and putting it up for rent, having accepted a new journalism job in Thailand. For 3 years living in Portland, I've almost perfected the downward dog and the warrior's pose, and drunk more tea than coffee and sat in the evenings on a meditation pillow trying to engineer my brain for stillness, for staying. But I'm not meant for this, not meant to be tied to a place for too long. The feeling of flight tucked into my tendons. And so I go. I keep moving because that is what I know. In Kaiser, the smell of fresh cut grass mixes with the heady pine resin aroma of hops in the fields around the bend from the vineyards. Matt has come in from tending rows of chayote hanging like bats in the quiet cave of the trellis my father made, and garden beds brimming with bird's eye chilies, tomatoes, mustard greens. When I show her the faded photo of my siblings and father in the Philippines. At that time, I was still in the hospital watching over you, Matt said. I stayed with you so long, I didn't get to have my picture taken along with everyone else. She wants to exist, to count, and to be counted. I, due to my frailties, have caused this first split in our family, have created this absence in the photo. Another rupture to come 40 years later, and more family photos that will be incomplete. But for now, in that moment when my family is divided 4 and 2, at least I'm not alone. At least we are 2. At least I still have my mother. Early medical records make my situation clearer. Scrawled across a single sheet of a doctor's green notepad, 3 words float on the page: failure to thrive. Those words now feel less like diagnosis than indictment. This is not the story I wish to have. Labels are harder to escape than countries. There's a time in America when I cannot convince my mother that I will live. At Dr. Barry's office in Corvallis, Oregon, my mother speaks with hand and body gestures. There are no other Khmers in Corvallis, hence no translator to help her and Dr. Barry comprehend each other. A solution comes in the form of a high school student, the daughter of one of the members of our local church. She speaks French, as do my parents, a legacy of Cambodia's French colonization. And in this 3-way translation in Dr. Barry's examination room, The adults and the teenager piece together what the matter is with me. She's very malnourished, Dr. Berry explains to Matt. He will be my doctor for the next 17 years with kind eyes and bushy brows that make me laugh when he waggles them. Dr. Berry gets the gist of the details about our escape from Cambodia and the 23 days at sea when I ate nothing. He shakes his head. A miracle. I'm 15 months old and weigh 15 pounds on Dr. Berry's scale. Dr. Berry will check my ears, nose, and throat, and then order a litany of tests to examine my blood and look at my lung function. Matt will watch a nurse draw a long syringe and push the needle into my back. I will writhe, the spinal tap causing me to screech in pain. My mother, wrecked by the sight of her daughter suffering, will cry too. We were not used to this. All these people poking and probing my baby, Matt said. I also have asthma, it turns out, so severe that Matt will be afraid to put me down in my crib at night, worried I might struggle to breathe and then stop breathing altogether. Kun Malaine, my sister, died after running out of tears. Now here's a baby threatening to run out of breath. Matt decides to hold me upright in her arm at night, my head lolling on her shoulder as I fall asleep. She will learn to sleep like that too, upright on a chair with her baby girl. In the morning, she will spoon feed me the medicine Dr. Berry prescribed. One night, you labored so hard to breathe, Matt told me. I whispered into your ear, if it's too difficult to live, Gon, you can go. Her words carry so much weight. I think for a moment, how could she have fought so hard to keep me on the boat only to let go of me so easily, so early in America? I wonder, how many ways can a child make her mother suffer? There are times when my mother tells too much story. When I ask for one detail, she gives me a dozen. And within those dozens, I am left feeling inadequate or guilty or hopeless all over again. This is the danger then in asking too many questions. You cannot control the answers. You cannot unhear the things you have heard. You cannot unknow the incredible sorrow you caused your mother. Failure to thrive is what the doctors said. 3 words flicked like sand into my mother's ears, taking shape inside her, docking on her deepest insecurities. If her baby fails to thrive, she will take it to mean one thing only, that she has failed too. 3 words are enough to make a story I will spend my life trying to override.
And you do that.
I've overwritten it in here. You will see in these pages, I have overwritten the hell out of these 3 words.
So interesting how the narrative of what we've grown up with, we take that and then we live it. Because throughout high school, college, as a journalist, you kept pushing and pushing and pushing yourself to edge. You're like, oh, failure to thrive, I'll show you. To the point where it would break you sometimes. But it's because you heard that narrative and then it became you. So I've been doing work in the space of post-traumatic stress and post-traumatic growth. And they say what is really key is not only to acknowledge what has happened, but also to rewrite that narrative so that it doesn't pain you anymore. And I'm curious, when you wrote that chapter, how were you? How are you?
Oh, wow. Thank you for asking that question. I realize I have to be alert with you, Susan. Your questions are so deep.
Girl, we all like go deep over here.
You know, I really like I haven't heard of post-traumatic growth, and there's such power in that. Because there was so much growth that happened along the way of writing this memoir. It was actually growth that began when I started interviewing my parents about their lives in Cambodia and began learning something new about who they were, and then by consequence, who I was and who my siblings are. You know, that it's a hard question because there were so many emotions that came out over the course of writing this book. And one of the things I will say is that as a journalist, you take great care to not trigger or traumatize the person that you're interviewing. And in this case, it was my mother, mostly. My father too, sometimes. And there's a deep emotional cost to diving deep and pushing over rocks that had not been pushed over before. So my mother was re-triggered. And then I myself was also re-triggered writing certain chapters of the book. That was one of them. You know, the scrap of paper that, something I'll say about my father that I absolutely appreciate is that he's the record keeper of the family. So he was the one that had just slips of, just scraps of medical records. You know, when we were in Camp Pendleton in California, he kept these meal cards that each of us got, and it has our names on them. When I came across that scrap of paper that said failure to thrive, indeed, that was my reaction. I was like, fuck this shit. Dang it. I'm trying not to swear. I was like,
You want to give me $1 every time?
I
or what?
do, I know. I was
It's
like, you know
okay,
what,
it's okay.
screw
We're not-
this.
we're not on radio.
Oh, okay,
We're
good,
not on
yeah.
radio. It's fine.
Sorry, you guys. I have to really clean my act up. I was like, screw this. I am going to thrive. I'm going to do whatever it takes to thrive. And so I would say that for me, there was a real, what my therapist calls this growth curve. And for me, I hit that curve in a very serious way about a year ago, coming to the end of this. And with that chapter, and also later, there's a chapter about my time working in Afghanistan. And I think we can't ever be who we're meant to be unless we actually push up against those places that hurt the most.
Thank you.
So part of the book that really resonated for me is the refugee story, the being boat people and coming to America. And the thing about refugee stories is they don't just end when you arrive to America and like, we're done. In fact, it intensifies because you sacrifice so much just to get here that now we're going to make it really worth it.
That's right.
And so you talk about since you were a toddler, you spent your summers picking berries out in the fields. Sometimes you would lie to your other classmates and say what you wish you could be doing that summer. But you knew right when that bell rang, you were out there in the fields in the morning, all the way until it got dark, with your mom, with your siblings, hunched over. And that's what refugees and immigrants do. They work. They take money, they try to send it back to support their family. And I want to hear more about that. So can you give us a little taste from the chapter Picking Season?
Yeah, so a couple of my sisters are actually here in the audience too. And we always joke about how back in the day, there were no, and my wife is a labor rights advocate. There were no labor rights back in the day. And so we worked from sunrise to sunset 6 days a week through every summer of our growing up years. So I'm gonna read a short section of berry picking, and this takes place in Corvallis. And I know a couple of old pals from Corvallis, my high school years, are in the audience, which is fantastic. So you'll appreciate this because you may even know some of these farms we worked for. And also one of the things I will say is that, we talk a lot about another key ingredient to the refugee story is food. And so of course, to nobody's surprise, I'm gonna be reading about food in this little excerpt. In the fields, my family wore secondhand jeans with sticky set-in stains, plaid shirts chewed and grimed at the cuffs, and galoshes that revealed tube socks, doubled up for comfort with holes in the toes. Each morning was the same. We got dressed, reported to the kitchen for breakfast, and loaded into the car, zombie-like and without complaint, not because we enjoyed working, but because we understood in basic terms that this was our life. During the school year, we played the same sports and complained about the same teachers and ate the same nachos, sludged with orange cheese, our friends did, but we understood we were different. while our friends at school played various summer sports and went to Girl and Boy Scout music camps, we woke at 5 a.m. most mornings with a gentle scratch at our backs from Ma, who was up at 4 a.m. making our meals. She was the first to wake, the first to disperse our home's cold overnight air as her bare feet shuffled across the cold linoleum kitchen floor between stove and fridge to make our breakfasts and lunches in one go. We left for the fields when it was still too dark to see anything besides our breath straining through dense fog that clung to the valley and didn't lift until well after sunrise. It was so cold, our teeth clattered, and the dew on the leaves soaked our sleeves as we reached into the strawberry bushes to claim the juicy red jewels. Matt said, "Keep moving to keep warm," and so we did. Matt prioritized feeding her family above all else, the greatest demonstration of love in Khmer culture. Lunch was sometimes rice with stir-fried beef and pickled mustard greens, or a loaf of Fran's white bread with packaged lunch meat. Matt pre-washed and pre-portioned iceberg lettuce and sometimes tomato slices so we could build our own sandwiches. I rarely bothered washing my hands, too hungry and impatient to wait, as my sisters poured tap water from a recycled plastic soda bottle to rinse their hands. I ignored the black fingerprints smudged on those nice pillowy white slices of bread and the gritty crunch plowing through my sandwich like I hadn't eaten for days. More often, Mott packed us sardine sandwiches, which she called survival food, because sardines and rice were all we had to eat on the boat when we left Cambodia. She used a loaf of thick French bread that she had dispatched one of us kids to get from the IGA supermarket the day before at exactly 4 p.m. when the price was cut in half to 50 cents. Mott slit the belly of the bread and spooned canned sardines inside, the tomato sauce soaking the crust, then stuffed it with her own homemade carrot pickles, cilantro, and sriracha hot sauce. She counted heads and cut the resulting hoagie evenly with a long, serrated knife. We did not starve in those fields. Mott made sure of it. But sometimes she underestimated our appetite or tried too hard to be economical. I kept it to myself whenever I was still hungry after all the food was gone. There was no point in telling her. It would only break her heart. I was always the first to finish my food, and I glanced around to my siblings and cousins longingly to see if they might leave me a crumb. No luck. Invariably, Mott would eat a few bites of her sandwich, announce she was full, and then pass the rest to me. My face lit up with joy as I nibbled away while my siblings glared at me for taking our mother's share. Lunch lasted 15 minutes in the shade of the biggest bush if we were picking blueberries, or on the shady side of our car if it was strawberries, where you got to rest your back against a wheel if you were fast enough to call dibs. To sit for a minute and collect some of the coolness concentrated in the shade when the valley still held the heat of the day is a sensation that ripples through me even now, a moment of peace and stillness that I cling to.
That was one of my favorite passages.
You know, I have to say, Corvallis is super easy to write about. There's just a sweet aroma in the air. It's the loam of the farm fields and the sweetness of the berries and the fruit.
Or you're just like a really amazing writer. Because we live in neighborhoods near each other. And when I got to that section where you're describing your neighborhood, I was like, oh, that sounds really awesome. And I was like, oh, I live there. I was like, Hood is just really talented. You bring us right there. We are squatting right next to you. We can feel the heat on our faces. When you go to Cambodia, I feel the humidity blow my head back. I mean, you are just talented.
Yeah,
and you bring me there. And I gobbled up your book so fast.
Yeah.
Like I was literally eating with you. You know, when I order banh mi, I also get gamoy, which is sardines, tomato sardines with cucumber. And it's such an odd thing to order. Most people always order like roast pork, duck dick, like all kinds of meats. And I'm just like, no, I still crave that flavor because it's your childhood and what your parents could afford. And it's reminiscent for them. And then it just you find yourself in your 30s and 40s still eating it, being like, why am I eating this? But like,
We're
it's the
still
only
eating-
thing that hits the spot.
It is. We're still eating it. And I have to say, so I don't want to give the end of the book away, however, and I
But
don't
if you
also,
did,
I won't, and I don't want to embarrass my wife who's here in the audience also, but there's a scene about sardines comes back in the book. I'll just say.
makes a comeback, makes a comeback.
Sardines makes a comeback. I was hungry just reading my own words right now, in fact. and I-
Girl, tell me about it.
I-
Okay, so there's a turning point in the book. For decades, you please your mom. You do everything you
Mhm.
can. You sponsor the education of your extended family in Cambodia. You are trying to be a good daughter. And then you reach a point where you can't anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
You reach a point where you have to fulfill your own needs above your culture, above your mother, the very person who you had so much debt to. You go a different route.
Mhm.
You don't want to, but you do. Like you try not to, and then you go.
Mhm.
Can you tell us about that? At
Yeah.
what point where you're like, you know what? I'm gonna choose me now, which is
Mhm.
totally antithetical to being a good Khmer daughter.
It is. Well, that one point is sitting right here in front, right here. You know, I just have to say, love punks us all. Love punks us all. When I met April, I still was on that path of never wanting to return to America. And then I met her and I mean, you'll have to read the book to see what happens, but I think that I got to a point in my life where the decision was no longer, how was I going to make my mother happy? The decision became, I met this person who makes me incredibly happy and joyful. Do I get to choose that for me now? And I think that there comes a point when if we're talking about, a balance question, love becomes heavier than debt at some point. And that's what happened, I think. And it was not even just love, it was love for my partner who became my wife, but it was also something deeper. It was that self-love of, I've given her 40 years. Let me have the next 40 years of my life for me.
Yeah. Love it. Beautiful. Love makes you do crazy things.
We are crazy, yes.
Okay, so we've talked a bit about the book and we got you to read a little bit. And now I want to talk about the craft of writing. Because I know in me doing my play stuff over the years, I've just met so many people saying, I want to tell my story. I'm scared. How do I do it? How do I even start? And I'm so excited, especially in the AAPI community. There are so many wonderful stories. We need to be seen. We need to be heard. And the time is now. And works like yours only get us more excited that we can do it for ourselves. I wanted to get a speed read through my favorite quotes. And I'm going to only take 25 seconds to do this because I wanted to, we had very specific moments here. And I just want to give you more taste of how delicious this book is. And then I want to know, how hard was it to do this? Okay. One of my teachers moves in to pry me off one finger at a time, like peeling a leech off its host. Ma seemed to glow when she walked into the kitchen, conducting her own energy, even when no appliances were turned on. You know the pineapple, how it has so many eyes? She once asked me. I'm just like that. There's nothing I can't see. And if she ever saw all of us together perched on the sofa, she swatted at us and we scattered like flies, buzzing off a hunk of meat. She something us to go do homework or housework. It hurt her eyes, she said, to see us sitting around. When I ran through mud and could not return the sneakers to their pristine bleach white color, she took a knife and sawed them in half. When we arrived in Phnom Penh, just as the skies burst open with monsoons, when the rains came, it was as if through a single slit in the sky, an entire sea crashed onto the land. When you cannot wrap your daughter in the finest silks, you wrap her in your most elaborate stories. Who can you trust in war? The mind spins and spins with fear, and fear is fertilizer for trauma. This is where your trauma grows without you knowing. Okay, was that not delicious? Like, it's a buffet for me. It's a buffet for me, all you can eat. Okay?
You know, the pineapple is not here physically, but I worry she's watching from Oregon.
We know
That
she's
her
watching. We know
eyes-
she's watching through Zoom.
Right.
Okay, this book took you 4 years to make.
It did.
It started with a Modern Love article.
Right.
Everyone wants that, right?
Mhm.
I just need to get Modern Love. And then 4 years. So much lyrical prose in every single page, the transitions. I'm like with you at every cliffhanger. I'm like, how many drafts was that to get to there? Right? Because when I read it, I'm like, oh, it just like flows out of her mouth. It's amazing. It's so easy. But like 4 years of your life. Can you tell me about the
Yeah.
drafting process? Like, I know everyone's an onion, but like, was there no onion left?
Yeah. There was nothing left. A year ago this month, I gave it my last shot, draft number 10. And actually, I will say each of those 10 drafts are probably their own book. My editor, who's just fantastic, Daphne Durham, the draft 2, 3, maybe even pushing into draft 4, she kept having to tell me, I want you to really try hard to take your journalist hat off and put your writer's hat on. I said, I'm not a freaking writer. I'm a journalist. Caught myself that time.
That was good. It was good.
And the transition from being a journalist to being a writer, for me, it was a very treacherous and difficult bridge to make, because as a journalist, I could hide behind and only focus on facts and truth. And as a writer, suddenly I was asked to say what I feel. Well, when you spend your life not ever exploring how you feel, you don't know how to put that on the page. So this book was really so many drafts, and bless Daphne's heart, who was so patient through me through each and every draft. And a couple of her writers are actually here in the room as well. And so you guys know what I'm talking about. Is super, incredibly patient editor. And one of the things I will say about those lines that you gave, when I was living in Cambodia, there was a point at which I spoke more Khmer than English, and I even dreamed in Khmer. And it is said that if you begin to dream in another language, you have become fluent. And that was about 1.5 years after I moved there. And our language is so beautiful. It's poetry. There's a lot of alliteration. And so to me, having come from that world of Cambodia and my mother's stories, and then being in Cambodia and hearing the language spoke all the time, every day in my ear, when it came time to writing, I won't say it was like easy for me to get the cadence of the sentences down, but there was something in me that was already attuned to that sort of beat, if that makes sense. And so it wasn't easy. And this is something that I tell my students also, that, and every writer knows this, all writing is truly rewriting.
Oh, I know it too well.
It is. It's
unfortunate.
so much rewriting. Yeah.
Okay, before we get to my last question, I just want to encourage the audience to write down questions on your index cards. And if you're online, put them in the Q&A box, because we're going to get to them. Okay, so, I mean, my last question here is just for anyone out there, whether they are at this place where they have had the courage to interview their family, where they've ever written one page down, or, checked out the book, The Artist's Way, like, what is your advice to them as they're going to set off on this journey to write their story and their family story?
Mhm. Yeah, thank you for that question. And it's an important one, whether you're a writer or not, I think, because ultimately memoir is just us telling our own stories. And who here in this room has never told another person something about your life? in your own personal story. When you are doing that, you are indeed engaging in the act of not necessarily memoir writing, but memoir telling. And one of the things that I will say, and I kind of wish I knew while I was writing my memoir, more memoirs. And I didn't, and I do now, which I'm super thankful for. Find a way to stay committed to your story. Don't ever quit your own story. I think there were a couple times over the course of me working on this book, it really does feel like start to feel like a marathon after a while. And there are a few times, so in a marathon, it said like if you hit mile 17, you're either going to bonk or you keep going, kind of thing. And a couple times I hit that mile 17 in the course of writing this book, and I just wanted to give up. I thought it's not worth the pain. I'm crying too much, and I don't like to cry. I don't cry, and I thought I got to keep going. Stay committed to your story and the reason why you're writing. I have 10 reasons. When I go into my writer's room, every single time I think of those 10 reasons, they're my 10 nieces and nephews, and I'm writing for them every single time I sit in my chair, because I want them to know the other part of who they are, the Cambodian part of who they are. My mother at one point tells me, there's a scene where she's trying to tell her grandchildren stories of Cambodia, and it's difficult for her to tell my siblings and have them translate into Khmer. And she tells me, she said, I don't know what's going to happen to all these stories I'm telling you and your sisters and brother when I'm gone, when I'm gone, the story ends. Well, don't let your family's story end. Don't let your story end.
Thank you. I got to get my 10 reasons.
You have to have 10 reasons. Yeah. Have at least one reason. I'm lucky that I've got 10. Yeah.
All right, some questions from the audience.
Okay.
Were there any stories your mother told you that clashed with your own memories? How did you address or resolve that in writing of this book?
Yeah, boy, you guys do not let me off the hook. So it's a hard one. There's a recent one. It's still pretty raw. There's a scene in the book that was tough to write. It's tough to read. I really went back and forth on whether or not to include it. And I came down in the end on the side of, if I'm going to write a memoir, I'm going to write a story that I feel like needs to be told. So my father was sent to the front lines during the war in Cambodia, and he was never trained in combat. And suddenly he had a gun in his hand and was told to go fight and kill. And that PTSD that he suffered fighting on the front lines during the Civil War in Cambodia, which was between 1970 and 1975, followed by the genocide between 75 and 79. That PTSD followed my family to Corvallis, Oregon, where we settled, and it manifested in a physical way. One of the earliest memories I have is of my father lashing out at one of my cousins who escaped with us. And my mother questioned me about that, and she said, "You were so young, Put. How could you remember this?" And I'm so clear in my memory, because when traumatic things happen, it's like it rivets in your brain and doesn't leave. It becomes a part of you. My best friend, Luong, who has written about surviving the genocide, she was questioned when her memoir came out. Well, you were only 4 years old, 5 years old. How could you remember things in such detail? In those moments of trauma, all of your senses just come to life, and those memories are seared in you for the rest of your life. So when my mom had a different version of what happened than the version I have in the book, there was a moment of reckoning between us, and I came down to the conclusion that our truths are only ours. My mother and I could be in the same room and experiencing the same thing, and she would have a completely different truth than what mine is. And so this book is not meant to be her truth or anybody in my family's truth, but mine and how I remember things. But it's always hard because then the journalist part of me wants to get it right. And if my mother disputed this, I thought, well, then I better change it. But then I thought, I don't dispute my own memory.
Yeah, it goes back again to that duality of Cambodian American identity, right? And
Right.
doing, it's like so much you have to do for the family. And it's like, well, actually, this is my truth and that's mine.
Right, right.
I'm really interested in this question. As you were revisiting your own past and your parents' past, what personal boundaries did you have for yourself as you were engaging with that work? And also with just writing in general, like do you put up any boundaries or you're like, I'm gonna feel all the feels?
Yeah, oh no, the boundaries, the borders were thick going into this project, and they still are pretty thick, actually.
Like, what does that look like?
You know, it was, you don't want to confront the truth of even who you are, because there's vulnerability in that. And one of the biggest pieces of vulnerability, of course, is shame. And there were many moments of shame in this book, the biggest of which for me being the shame of being gay. How could I reconcile and reckon with that part of me and not feel that shame anymore? And so for a long time, I actually didn't want to write about me being queer and the topic of, queerness in the Khmer or the Khmer American community, because I think it was still too raw for me. And, this is where I have to blame my editor, because she kind of dragged me kicking and screaming down this path. And I never even wanted to write this particular book per se. I had a book planned that focused on my parents. And that's because I wasn't willing yet to delve into those deeper parts of me. But then again, it comes back to the question of the book deal I signed was for a memoir. If I'm going to write a memoir, then it's incumbent upon me to do the best I can to really delve into that interior world. And so I bribed myself with chocolate. And I told myself, it's a true story. You can ask my wife. I told myself, if you get through this, just write this one section, you've got that chocolate bar sitting in the house. It's all yours. You don't even have to share it.
That's your advice?
You got to do what you got to do. Chocolate was it for me. Yeah.
Noted. Okay, how do you and your parents and your family navigate the fact that they could read this book? Are there things in it you couldn't say to them in person?
No, I have just finished recording the audiobook version of the book. And I'm going to be sitting with my parents to listen to it, because my mom picked up the advanced review copy, which is what Susan and I are both holding. And she thumbed through and she was like, oh, so many words put. It took me about 10 years to finish your book. I would read one sentence a day. But of course they can understand English. And so I do intend to sit with my parents. My sister who's here, who I'm so grateful for, she read early drafts of the book. And my siblings have read different chapters. My other siblings have read different chapters of it. There are hard truths in this book. I joke about being ready for my parents to disown me one more time after knowing the full extent of what's in here. But my attitude about that is that I survived being abandoned once by making the decision to marry my wife. I could stand to be abandoned one more time.
It's a sick path we take on, this memoirist path.
Yeah.
Susan, I'm going to jump in here.
Jump in.
I'm going to jump in here with a
Splash.
question.
Come in, it's cold.
I love it. I have a question from the online audience, from Rachel. What is your favorite thing about your book?
Yeah. I would have to say part 3. And again, I don't want to give it away, but so here's the deal, you guys. You may cry in part 1. You may continue to cry in part 2. I promise you in part 3, there's levity, there's light. I love that part. it's when I meet April. I love that part because, well, for a number of reasons. It was fun to write, you fall in love, and I'm still in love. Those things are easy to say. And I think for my heart, I needed that levity to finally get to that scene, to finally get to those scenes. And also, there's more humor that's there. I mean, for example, there's a scene in which my mom's so utterly embarrassed that I've moved back to Salem, and I've moved in with April, and I've been taking the bus. I don't have my own set of wheels. And I think she's not sure whether to be more ashamed that she's got a daughter who's gay, or she's got a daughter who takes the bus and rides her bike. As in, like, you're so poor, you don't even have your own set of wheels. And so they're trying to sell us their Camry. And she calls me up and she's like, we have an idea for you. We have a proposition. What is it? We want, your dad and I want you to have a car. Okay. And they said, we want to give you the Camry. I said, okay, how much are you selling it for? She's thought about it. I don't think she actually had a number, but she just threw out 5,000. And she said, but we'll give you the car for free if you're not gay. I said, I'm still gonna be gay at the end of the day, Mom. So I just go down with the damn $5,000 and get, So there's humor in that part 3 that is fun to get to.
I found a lot of humor throughout.
Did
It was
you?
so
Okay.
beautiful. I mean,
Okay.
it was so good.
Yeah.
More?
We do have a couple more questions. I have a fun one from another Rachel. Will there be a Matt and me cookbook?
Oh,
Ooh, yes.
my oldest sister had asked me about that. I think she's trying to get in on this publishing thing. She flew out from Nebraska, so unfortunately she couldn't be here. She's tuning in with the pineapple down in Oregon. So I am the keeper or the writer of record in our family. My oldest sister is the keeper of my mother's recipes. I had to be super nice to her because I would like those recipes. So there may indeed be a recipe book down the line.
Oh my God, like so many of the soups and the dishes. I was so many parallels to Vietnamese cooking.
It
was so
is,
exciting.
yeah. And then my editor, she was reading it. So imagine my editor, she's got to slog through 10 freaking drafts of this thing. And she's like, oh God, but like every time I read another draft of your book, I just get hungry and hungrier. I don't know what to do about that. And then April even accused me. She said, there's food on every single page of your book. I said, that's not true. I said, oh, wow. Oh no. Oh shoot, she's right.
Oh, I'm curious about just the mechanics of recording an audiobook. Like,
Yeah.
is it like 9 straight hours and you're just like drinking water and then you're like,
Yeah.
should I do it again? But like
Oh my
sexy, like,
God,
like
yeah.
how do you, what goes on there?
God. I have to give a shout out to Emily Stewart, the producer who works with me remotely from New York. Award-winning producer, just fantastic. And Aisha over at Jack Straw, sound engineer, who were just fantastic. This was, we had so many takes on so many different things. But what I will say is that, I was telling you in the green room before we entered that I don't cry, or I don't cry easily. And so I prided myself on 7 days of recording, not shedding a single tear. And meanwhile, Emily and Aisha would be like, oh, yeah, can we take a break? They'd be like crying, I to like compose themselves. Well, yours truly ended up crying on the very last day. And what I realized is that when it's one thing to write and to be just you and your words on the computer or notebook. When you're reading your own story out loud, I think that something happens just physically inside of you. There was emotions that I didn't know that I had stored there. And I actually, the very last section I wrote was when my father-in-law passed away from leukemia. It was a really hard section to write. It was a really hard section to read. And what I also understood was that over the course of recording that audiobook, how much I missed him, but then also just how much of a release there was to just get say the final sentence of the book which I'm not going to give it away, but there's some redemption here in this book, which comes vis-a-vis the last line of the book.
That's good to the last word.
Yeah, yeah.
2 more questions. Great. Oh, I have pineapple. I see you. What questions were you most afraid to ask your mother? Were there any questions you didn't ask because you didn't want to know the answer, even though she might be listening right now?
She may be listening, and my father may be listening too.
Yeah.
This was a hard one. It was not so much more my mother. I asked my father if he had killed anybody, which was really hard to ask. And I'm not going to tell you his response. But part of me needed to know, because I think part of me was still trying to understand where his trauma lived in him. Because I was trying to put the pieces together and connect the dots of how that trauma manifested in our home, within our 4 walls. I mean, there's this idea in this book of the different layers and levels of war. There are these external wars, the ones that men make. There are wars between people, often between people who love each other. And in this story, in this case, it's between my mom and I. But then I think more importantly, there are the internal wars that we wage inside of ourselves. And for me, it was regarding my identity as being gay. And so the theme of war is so thick. Those are the questions that were hardest to ask for obvious reasons. Asking my mom about 1967, when she experienced the bombs in her country. She believes her oldest brother, who she loved and worshiped, died even before the genocide, died from American B-52 bombs. Those were difficult to ask because, again, those pieces of trauma are so hard. And yet, by not asking and by not talking, they stay locked in us. And so I think we have to keep asking.
Final question.
Bring it.
And I mean, there's way more. Like, we could be doing this for like 3 hours. How did the process of writing this book change your personal relationship to what history is?
Oh, yeah. Let me say, I was once very proud to be American. I still am very much proud to be American. However, what I will say is that when I researched what happened in Cambodia even before the genocide and learned that it was actually American B-52 bombs that dropped in my country in a secret bombing that then President Nixon had ordered, I began to question everything about my Americanness, about why I was pledging allegiance when I would go to sports games or when I was in class growing up to this flag, where one country who was not an aggressor in my country, but in nearby Vietnam. I mean, it was what the opening lines I read about the Americans called what happened in Cambodia collateral damage. Well, you know what? I'm fucking sorry. My country is more than just collateral damage. So I think that is the history that I think needs to be talked about, that we are more than just collateral damage. I love this thing that Viet Thanh Nguyen says about America. You want to know why I'm here in this country? Because you were in my country first. And I feel that way about America. I'm still so deeply, I very much identify as being American, but I am beginning now to also question what that means and what that history looks like when I begin to see more of these truths.
Thank you so much, Put. Well, Put, your memoir comes out officially tomorrow. You were all here when you saw it first. Buy the book at your local favorite bookseller, or this guy right here in the corner by LA Bay Books. Please pre-order online. I can't wait for the rest of the world to hear it. Thank you so
Susan.
much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was such an amazing conversation. Yeah. Oh, thank you. Thank you all.
Before anybody gets up, I just have a couple little housekeeping announcements. As Susan mentioned, Elliott Bay Book Company have copies of Puzzata's book on the table to your right. If you are staying to get books signed, Put will be signing at that white table that's there, and we are encouraging folks to line up across the podium. So the line will come this way. Seth will help direct traffic in case it's confusing, because maybe it is. If you are heading out into the night, please exit through the 4th Avenue lobby, which is behind me. You can drop off any surveys. If you're here in person, you can drop them on the table with the blue tablecloth. And if you are watching online, you can click the link that I just dropped in the chat and tell us what you thought. And of course, if you're watching from home, you can also find Put's book at elliottbaybook.com and at the library, of course. So we're so grateful to everybody who made tonight's program possible. Thank you to our program partners, Hedgebrook, the Wing Look Museum, and Elliott Bay Book Company. And thanks to our sponsors, the Gary and Connie Kunis Foundation, the Seattle Times, and the Seattle Public Library Foundation. And of course, thanks to all of you for joining us here in person and online. We'll see you next time. Good night, everybody.